Hello again. And I must say, Sister Tanya Lewis was just hilarious. What a blessing we have to have her join us today. Thank you, Tanya, for participating today. You just really sort of lighten things up for us, and what fun it is to have you with us. As it was stated, I'm Gina Wood, the newly elected president of the National Coalition 100 Black Women Northern Virginia chapter. And I'm really honored this afternoon to be able to moderate the panel discussion. And you're in for a real treat. As we were planning our panel discussion around the theme of unmasking the pillars of resilience, it was a reminder to me, and should be a reminder to all of us, that Black women and girls are resilient. They're powerful, we're innovative, and much more than that. Today's panel of experts will remind us of our strength and the importance of our advocacy. After a brief introduction of the panel, I'm going to transition to each of them to do opening remarks, followed by a few questions from myself. And then I want to urge you to put your questions in the chat, and we want to make sure that we can get to all of your chats. And one of my coalition sisters, either Sister Michelle Thompson Caldwell or Dr. Bathsheba Bryant Tarpe, will assist me in moderating those questions, but we definitely want you to be able to participate in this part of the program. And then we'll also allow our panelists to have some closing comments as well in terms of some of the key points that will have been part of the discussion this afternoon. So let me move right quickly into introducing our panelists, who I'm so excited for you all to meet as well. I'd like to start off with Dr. Kanika Harris, who currently serves as the Director of Maternal Health for the Black Women's Health Imperative, an organization that our national coalition has a partnership with, and we're so pleased that they're based in Washington, D.C. Dr. Harris is a behavioral health scientist with a special focus on health equity and maternal health and women's health. She is the mother of 3, near-miss survivor, a doula, and birth justice advocate. She also serves as the maternal health equity advisor for the state of Maryland and the public health expert for the Lactation Commission in Washington, D.C. I was also excited to learn that Kanika is co-directing and producing a documentary called Listen to Me, which explores 4 women at the front lines of Black maternal health, or really the Black maternal health movement, walking through tightropes of racism and birth in America, funded by the Black public media. She received her master's degree in public health and international development from Morehouse School of Medicine and her PhD in health behavior and health education from the University of Michigan. With 20 years of experience in education, association, and nonprofit sectors, our other speaker is Mariama Boney. She has been successful in creating and systematic practices and aligning critical needs. In addition, she's passionate about well-being of children and youth and has created and launched a comprehensive multicultural program, leadership and diversity strategy, and organizational transformation, partnerships, membership development, and grants. Mariama also serves as interim executive director of Advocates for Children and Youth, an advocacy nonprofit in Maryland. She is the president and CEO of Achieve More, LLC, which some of you hopefully participated in during our earlier breakout session with our vendors. She's a minority-owned consultancy with the mission of maximizing results, creating safe spaces, and expanding organizational possibilities during times of change. And our third speaker and expert this afternoon is Tabatha Turman, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Integrated Finance and Accounting Solutions, an award-winning government contracting consulting firm. With over 20 years of experience as an Army finance officer and as a consultant in the areas of military accounting and financial management, she has grown her firm from one-woman consulting firm to a highly regarded employee-oriented multi-million-dollar firm. Tabatha sets the strategic direction of the company and has led and supported numerous clients in a variety of consulting roles. These initiatives would provide would include projects to develop plans for implementing strategies, automating and improving processes, and measuring performance. She's an accomplished executive with a proven record of successful leadership and management experience, encompassing strategic and operational planning, finance, personnel management, training, and program management. I am so pleased to welcome our 3 experts today. To kick us off, I'd like to turn to Dr. Kanika Harris. Dr. Harris, BWI was founded to protect and advance the health of Black women and girls. How do we increase the number of healthy Black women and girls today? Thinking of it from the context of mental, physical, and spiritual health to kind of help kick us off in that area of health. And welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, welcome. It's great to be here. It's very hard to follow up on comedian Tanya Lewis, I think that's her name.
Yes.
She's amazing. And when I think about this question, and listening to her and looking at the pictures that you all had up, that's where it's at. We innately know what to do. We innately know how to keep ourselves healthy. Resiliency is in the way we really try to move stress through our bodies. We are in a situation where, like we said, inherently we are powerful, inherently we are healthy, inherently we are resistant. However, we live in a society that Tanya so eloquently made us laugh about, that can pull away at those things that will keep us healthy and resilient. And so when that happens, how do we overcome that? And how we overcome those things is we try and move that stress through our bodies. And the way we do that, the Black Women's Health Imperative did, I think, about a 2-year-long study on this question. What can we learn and how can we keep Black women healthy? And what can we learn from healthy Black women? And the two things that really stood out from that study was looking at research from the Black Women's Health Study, which started, I believe, in the 90s. It was the 20th year anniversary of that Black Women's Health Study, where Black women, about 60,000 of us, stood up and we participated in the study for 20 years. 20 years, 60,000 Black women showed up every year to get information and data on various things around cancer, around diabetes, all the things about what can keep us healthy. And what we found when we looked at that data, and I analyzed it from the perspective of who are the healthy Black women in the study and what we can learn from them. And the two things that stood out the most, very easy things. One, walking at least 10 minutes every day. That's how we can move that stress through our body. Walking 10 minutes a day, just starting there leads to your body wanting more and wanting to make more changes over time. So once you start something simple like walking 10 minutes a day, you're gonna wanna walk longer, you're gonna wanna feel better, you're gonna wanna start making other changes in your life. But women who just started there and did that consistently, if that was all they did, had major changes in their blood pressure and diabetes and losing weight. Also, what I just saw on the screen when you showed your video, the coalition just creating ways that we can be with each other. Social support is one of the #1 indicators of health for Black women. So the more we are in relationship with each other, the more we are working with each other. Now I try and use the term about relational wealth, because a lot of times, especially in the pandemic, we are in situations where we are a little more isolated, especially in my field with supporting Black mothers and Black babies. That relational wealth, how we build relationship with each other, how we are in community with each other, that protects us from these stressors that we experience in society as Black women that can undermine our health. So I just want to keep it simple there. And I also want to say rest. We underestimate rest. We underestimate that that's how we recover. We need to rest. Black women do so much. We are team too much sometimes, and we need to know how to rest, and we need to model that it's okay to rest, and we need to model those experiences of joy as well for our children. So I want to leave it there because I want to say that these are very easy steps that I think we can all do, and that we are already doing a lot. We are already doing everything that we can. And so this is not about putting more on us and being like, we need to do this, we need to do that. It's about, these are some easy steps to help move that stress through our body and support each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanika. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the 3 points. that you pointed out for us. And I want to come back to those. So thanks for sort of getting us started on the health piece of our theme. I'd like to now go to Mariama Boney, who's going to really focus a little bit more on the education side. And, research on school resilience in Black girls has focused a lot on the role of family, community, and school in promoting resilience. Why do you think Black girls possess higher self-esteem than other racial and ethnic adolescent female groups? And more importantly, sort of those three dimensions of family, community, and schools as it pertains to education and our young girls' success.
Yes, thank you so much. And, as we think about the resilience of Black girls, especially as it relates to education, I reflect upon a program that I was involved with and coordinated when I was at James Madison University on the it's called the Female Institute for Youth Development. And although we were in the college setting, it really was about helping Black girls. They also had a male academy as well, to really be thinking about preparing for career, as well as the things that were necessary for them to continue to be successful in an educational setting. And not only within that program and other programs that I've worked with, and also what the research shows, for example, through the American Psychological Association, they had done some exhaustive research around resilience for African American children and adolescents. And that research continues to hold true in terms of, number one, this concept connected to family, making sure that we have those close female relationships within the family or even extended family. That's very important. Also, positive affirmations when we think about how our young girls and adolescents are interacting in the community, the way in which we can continue to show them positive examples and even positive messaging about what they're doing and how they're engaging. We also see that the confidence is higher because of some of the examples that are around them as well. And then number four, having higher aspirations. And so I think that that also comes through in terms of who is raising up and rearing our children, as well as the role of educators and continuing to instill that confidence. And then number five is active involvement in the community. You said it earlier, and that is also really critical in terms of how our young girls and adolescents are getting involved in community. It could be church, it could be dance, it could be a sport, it could be community service, it could be doing advocacy work, whatever it is that they can do to connect to community, extracurricular activities, very critical and important. And then lastly, mentors. Having someone to be able to, outside of the family setting, to connect with, to aspire to look up to, has also been very critical.
Thank you, thank you. Now let's bring in our third expert, Tabatha Turman, who, as you know, has been extremely successful in her business as a small business owner. And Tabatha, we've all sort of had this experience with COVID-19 and how it's impacted our community broadly. But it's also laid bare the structural inequities that compound with race and gender in terms of that intersection, and inequities that may be best addressed through recentering, say, economic policy on Black women. And my question is really around why putting Black women first may save us from economic disaster. And you may be familiar with this huge investment of Goldman Sachs and putting $10 million over a period of time into Black women, because I think even within the Wall Street, they realize now the power of Black women when it comes to the economy. So I'd love to get your perspective on that, just from your own experience with having such a successful business.
Okay, and thank you so much for having me. I know several women that have participated in the Goldman Sachs program. It is a wonderful program. They not only teach you about running a business, getting access to capital, you have access to people who have went through the program. So it increases your network as well, being in business. But back to your original question, when we say putting the Black woman first to save the economy, we must first put more Black women in office. We have to elect more Black women. And, I have a caveat there because I am from the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I am going to say that not only do we elect Black women, we elect Black women that align with our policies. and where we want to go as Black women. So that's first and foremost, we must do that. And it's only been about a decade since the previous global financial crisis. And while there was the economy increased and there was growth in the financial aspects of the economy, Black women didn't see that. Black women didn't see that growth. And so to avoid the same outcome on the other side of COVID, and there will be a recession, those in elected office setting policies must address the systematic problems that create economic inequality amongst Black women. Because let's face it, we were already underpaid before the pandemic, and we're still in that predicament. Although the stimulus payments helped, it's not the solution for sustainability. Just like that infrastructure bill that just passed, that $1 billion that we're hearing all the hoopla about, theoretically, policymakers could create a bill for Black women to assist Black women who are the core of the nation's economy. The funding bill should put, money directly in the hands of Black women. The frontline workers, small business owners, breadwinners in our families, and oftentimes the single heads of households. Again, putting the money directly in the hands of Black people so that we don't have to jump through hoops, cut through red tape in agencies that we just can't get the money from. PayPal it, Venmo, Cash App. The same way you sent the stimulus money out, let's send it to, directly to, those groups of individuals that I spoke about. For example, being in small business and, I do have a relationship with the banker, but there are some small businesses that they didn't have relationships with bankers. They didn't have employees when the PPP, I'm talking about the PPP loan, they didn't have access to that funding because they didn't have, they have a company, but they didn't have the infrastructure to apply for the PPP loan. So they were shut out. So it will be great if, this bill that we come up with, if we can go back and fix that and create some type of funding for these small Black women business owners, because not only will the funding help their businesses, it will also strengthen the Black family unit by creating generational wealth or a legacy in the form of a business to pass down from generation to generation. Again, as previously stated, and I can't stop this enough, we need to elect more Black women into office to affect the policies that are going to help strengthen the Black woman and the economy as a whole, because we are the center of the economy. And I am going to, one other thing, there is a Black woman, she's the chief economist at the Department of Labor. Her name is Janelle Jones, and she has made it her mission to put the Black woman first in the for economic policy, okay? And she truly believes that we can course correct the worst economic downturn in history by deliberately improving the economic outcomes of traditionally marginalized groups. We can't resort back to usual after the pandemic. And these are the words of Janelle. So again, we must elect more Black women into office. We must advocate for policies that put funding directly into the hands of individuals so that we don't have to jump through hoops to get it, just to be denied. And lastly, follow the economist, Janelle Jones, and hold her accountable. She has this platform, she has this agenda, she has this written mission. Again, she's the chief economist at the Department of Labor, and I don't know what your advocacy is like. Get on her calendar. As an organization, there are strength in numbers. You have sister organizations, the Black Women Agenda. Put some of these things in front of her that are important to you as an organization advocating for Black women and Black girls. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Turman. I love the advocacy part, obviously, of what you're talking about and the role of electing Black women. And we know that we're already seeing a difference there. And that sort of leads me back to you, Kanika, in terms of Black women be elected. We have probably the largest number of Black women right now in Congress. And one of the bills that was really led by Black women is the Black maternal health issue. And I know this is something that's truly dear to your heart. So I want to kind of pivot back to you with regards to that issue, but also I want us to also be thinking about how these issues interrelate, be it health, education, economic empowerment. They all really interrelate, very multidimensional. So I'm going to start there with you, Dr. Harrison, and then I'll sort of build an opportunity for others to chime in as well. And for the people, everyone on the Zoom, please put your questions in the chat because we want you to engage in this conversation as well. So over to you, Dr. Harris.
Absolutely. You are speaking of the Momnibus bill that is started with the Momnibus Act. Sorry, it started with 9 bills. Now we're at 11 bills. Black Women's Health Imperative was a huge part of the Black Maternal Health Caucus. The Momnibus bill was really started out of the outrage that we're experiencing now with the Black maternal health crisis in the United States. If we don't protect moms and babies, then, you know, like what's left for everybody else? That is like the pinnacle of you got to protect moms and babies. And that bill was really started from Congresswoman Underwood, who's the Black Congresswoman in Chicago. She's a nurse. She's a colleague of mine, and we both lost a colleague, Shalon Irving, 3 weeks postpartum. She delivered her baby girl. She was an epidemiologist for the CDC. And when we lost her, someone who had all the healthcare, the money, the knowledge, she worked in maternal health, and the healthcare system still failed her and failed her daughter. And that's where that Momnibus bill came from. In efforts to say, hey, we've got to stop. We've made so much traction with this bill. We now have, we have part of that bill where we can get postpartum coverage from 6 weeks to a year now. So states have the option to do that. We're working on maternal mental health. We're working on what you call the social determinants of health to make sure that those things that Ms. Turman is talking about that undermine us in terms of having all the resources that we need to live healthy and productive lives. We should have that. And that's what we need in order to have healthy births and healthy moms. That's also a part of that bill. And so these are key. It starts with birth. That's how we all get here. And so if we can't protect moms and babies, then we are at a huge deficit as a society. That's how you measure the wealth of a society, is through the health of moms and babies living beyond that first year. Additionally, what the bill has done is we've been able to point out racism for the first time as a risk, not race, not anything that we do, not anything that we eat, but racism as a determinant of poor health outcomes, not the fact that we're Black, not the fact that we're overweight, not the fact that we don't have money, but just racism and how that undermines our abilities to live healthy and productive lives. So that has also come out of this as well.
Yeah, that really builds on some research as well that was done years ago out of a researcher in Atlanta that sort of ties in not only with maternal health, but also infant mortality, where Black professional women, babies don't survive to see their first birthday. So this is clearly a priority for the National Coalition. It's a priority for our chapter. And so this is something that we want to continue to work on and to build partnerships. And so really appreciate the national partnership we have with the Black Women's Health Imperative, but certainly with other organizations as well. So Mariama, one of the things I wanted you to do is to kind of help us tie some of this together, particularly because you and Kanika both talked about the issues around relationships is one of the real strengths in terms of Black women and girls. And then also there's a question in the chat about thoughts on the importance of early childhood education and childcare for Black families. So I'm going to kind of ask you both to kind of take that on as well. I think she's on mute right now. Mariama is on mute. There you go.
There we go. Excellent. Sure. So it is absolutely critical, and all of these issues are, integrally intertwined. And so that's where we have to really consider the interconnectedness, and really this pipeline, right? In terms of the necessity that we have to have better outcomes as it relates to Black maternal health, which then ultimately leads us into healthy babies, healthy opportunities for early childhood education, all the way through then, thinking about all of these pieces of the puzzle around the whole child, and the importance of family economics, as well as health and even spirituality or faith or whatever element in terms of kind of this higher power that also really helps, and community, of course, also helps our children be successful, and the role of educators and administrators in that process. So as we think about this pipeline, and the role that education plays and all of these interrelated elements, it is really critical then kind of swinging back to early childhood education. We know that I think Tim Kaine, Governor Warner, in the summertime talked about how there was like $6.8 million as it relates to in Head Start funding just for Virginia alone. An article literally just dropped the other day, yesterday, in the Washington Post around this issue of the House really spending and expanding spending on early childhood education, and the importance of that, because we know the formative developmental elements that are critical at that state, and also the access that women and households, married couples, single couples, need to have access to childcare to be able to pursue their goals so that they can strengthen the family. So, so it's all connected. And so absolutely, that is really critical as well. And I will, if I can, find the link to that article and post that in the chat as well. And so although there are some critics out there, I think that it is a good move that both Virginia, as well as what we're seeing in this most recent bill in terms of the access to Head Start and even early Head Start. One of the things that we're also blessed with is that the new director of Head Start at the federal level is from Prince William County. She actually, Dr. Bernadine Futrell, she's actually a fellowship sister of mine. We go to Harvest Life Church together. So that is also, and she also comes from the Head Start program way back as well. So I think that we're seeing good progress, and the good intent. We just have to, very similar to what we saw with all the monies that were allocated during the pandemic and have continued to be forgiven related to the PPP, we want to make sure they get to the right people. We want to make sure that they get to our communities, and that our communities are not passed over.
Mm-hmm. And Tabatha, I want you to chime in. I know you want to jump in, but one of the things too that I think you pointed out, in addition to, and I think it really ties in with what Mariama is saying, as well as Kanika, is that it's not only important just to get Black women elected, but making sure that we are strategically placed in different positions to have an impact on those issues that we care about. Because you talked about the economists at the Department of Labor, Mariana just talked about the head of Head Start. I mean, these are really key places. And one of the areas where we're focused on is here in Northern Virginia, is not only helping to get Black women elected, but also making sure that we serve on those boards and commissions where decisions are made. But I'd love to, I know you wanted to jump in, so Tabatha, go right ahead. But I just wanted to point that out as well, that you really got us on a good trajectory with this conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to add to the conversation, because we all know that when we have those health disparities, and we're already on jobs that don't have the paid sick leave and the extended leave, there's a compound effect that comes with poor health and not having access to health care. You're missing work. And so that'll set you back financially as well. So part of the advocacy is more, you know, that paid sick leave, a more robust Family Care Act, so that you can take care of ailing sick ones. Because during the pandemic, unfortunately, that's what set a lot of Black women back as well. We had family members that passed from COVID. We had to take care of family members while we were the breadwinner. But we can't earn a living because we're taking care of multi-generational families. So there's a trickle-down effect. There has been a trickle-down effect as a result of COVID. So again, it goes back to we've got to have the right policies in place that acknowledges the fact that this does exist. If we are already financially strapped and then we have a pandemic, that sets us further back. So let's recognize this demographic of people that may need an extra leg up. You know, in that bill that I talked about, how about a subsidy for a couple years to right size our salaries? You know, we're already, you know, underpaid compared to our counterparts. So why not a subsidy there? To supplement our incomes for a few years to get us back on track while the economy is rebounding.
Very true, very true. Excuse me. Kanika, we've sort of, you know, we've raised the issue around racism, and I know sometimes people get real uncomfortable talking about it, but it is real. And there's evidence and clarity in terms of how it impacts us, particularly as Black women, and not to say that Black men don't face it as well. But I'd love for you, particularly given some of the great research that you've done, to kind of give us a deeper dive into our resilience. When I think about some of the things that we have to do in terms of coping, overcoming issues of racism and discrimination, you know, microaggression, oftentimes in the workplace, you know, how do we find that balance? I think you've already talked a little bit about that, but if you can maybe take us a little bit deeper into us as Black women and dealing with some of those issues from a resilience perspective would be great.
Wow, that's almost a little tough question, because I feel like we're trying to figure it out and maneuver and figure these things out on a daily basis. I think it's time to really start looking back in terms of models that we can use that have served us well in the past, that I think when we were in I don't want to say more dire situations, but you know, we're finding ourselves looking back to the civil rights movement, looking back even with slavery, to say, you know, how were we resilient through those situations? And again, I just go back to we were pooling our resources with each other. We were, during times of economic hardship, we were supporting each other. We were in intergenerational households. So like these new crises that we have around childcare, we had the support. We were supporting each other from young to old. We were seeing, one of the things that we're doing now is we're starting a doula program on historically Black universities, colleges and universities. And doulas are non-clinical women that support other birthing families during childbirth. And I'm sure all of you have heard of it. It's a very hot title and topic right now. But the idea behind that is that in our traditional societies, even coming to this country from Africa, the way we worked in terms of family, we always saw these things. So childbirth was not separate from our lives. You know, young women would be helping with birth. They would be helping postpartum to support those moms. They would be seeing these things, and that knowledge and that information is with them, so that when they have birth, they don't have that fear or that lack of knowledge. It doesn't happen, and it's not fragmented like it is in society. When we get to the hospital or when we become pregnant, then all of a sudden we have to learn all these things. So the way that we were transferring information between generations, the way that we're helping each other, we've now gotten to a point that the more money we make, the more successful we are, that we start to live in dyads. you know, just you and your husband and your children, and you start to get separated from those resources. And so I think looking back on those ways that we can be resilient through the support that we need. I have 4-year-old twins and it's a lot. When I think about this childcare question, I just wanted to point out that, you know, not only do we need support, but we need childcare to be free. You know, it is free in most developed nations that you have early childcare that's free. You know, we need time off. We need more vacation leave. Like other developed countries, they get over a month, like a month and a half of vacation time. And that's recognizing that your body cannot hold all this stress and keep moving. And so, you know, these are some of the things that we need. And in terms of resilience, it's finding those moments of joy every day. What are those moments of radical joy? That's why I love Tanya Lewis so much, because I was like, oh my God, for the first time today, I'm laughing. Like, I'm doing all these things. I'm working with the kids. I'm taking them to gymnastics and I'm running back home. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I needed to laugh. Thank you. So just know that having her here is a huge moment of resilience for us. You know, how we laugh. We have to keep moving. And we just have to keep finding new ways and reaching back to, you know, how do we get to this point? You know, and when I say this point, I mean, it's a point of huge success for Black women, considering all the things that we've come through in this country. And it's time to look back and see, well, how do we actually make it here? And what are those lessons we need to continue to take with us? And so just from my perspective, from, you know, being a mom of twins and, you know, having older children as well, I'm constantly looking at how I was raised and how my mom as a single mom was able to be resilient. And it was really through those networks and through family networks that, you know, we're in a different place where we're finding that we're dying younger. My mom's not with me anymore. My grandmother's not with me anymore. And so, like, for my children, they don't have that intergenerational kind of setup the way I did. And so how are we going to recreate those? You know, how are we recreating those relationships? How are we being creative? For me, I got my neighbors next door and I lean on them in that way. And so those are the things that from my perspective come to mind.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, Kanika, and I really appreciate you sort of taking us back to sort of where we were and helping us thinking about where we are today. And so that gives me the sense in terms, and I'd like just anyone to chime in, is that as we think about the time that we're here today to have this conversation, and I think about sort of unmasking the pillars of resiliency, it's like we've sort of arrived at a certain point in time. But now the question is, where do we go? Where should we be focusing in the future in terms of that? I think you all have talked a little bit about some of the things that we know are going on. But if we can look out, say, over the next, say, 10 years, we're in this new decade, and we came into this new decade in a pandemic. And that certainly has had some impact on us as Black women. But and we're starting to see some change now in terms of we're sort of coming out of it to some extent. But where do you think we should be going, particularly in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment, and particularly for the coalition as an advocacy organization? You know, what can we do? I mean, Tabatha, you kind of started us on that trajectory around, connecting with, Black women elected officials, because that's where we're seeing the differences being made. But I just would welcome your thoughts around, where should we be looking? What should be our priorities over, say, the next 3 to 5 years versus sort of the reaction? But where should we deepen our work with our young girls, for example? And again, even with our health, and then also the economic empowerment. So I'm just going to open it up for anyone that may want to chime in.
I'd say expose them to entrepreneurship at a young age. We all know that, business ownership, you can change a generation of poverty through entrepreneurship. Not to say you can't do it through working, but traditionally, and statistics show that entrepreneurship is a way that could change the trajectory for your family and create that generational wealth. So, and that's something that we don't talk about enough in the Black community, creating a legacy of something. We're just going day to day, month to month. If we want to truly think about 5, 10, what can I leave my grandchildren behind? That's one of the things. It may not be that business, but you create it, you make that money, and then you go, build other businesses from that. So I'd say, let's focus on generational wealth. Let's focus on, most of us have that entrepreneurial spirit. We have hobbies. I call them hobbies. If you're not making any, we make a little money off of it. That's a hobby. That's not a business. But if you really want to turn it into a business, let's start pouring into those folks that have that entrepreneurial spirit. Let's get them around people that look like them so they see that it can be possible, because they may not see it in their neighborhoods or in their families, but there are people out there that may be able to motivate them to do that, that look like them, that have came from areas that they've come from. So for me, it would be focusing on generational wealth as we climb ourselves out of this financial crisis.
Great. Who wants to chime in next? Go right ahead.
Yeah, and I would also really say that it's important for us to stay engaged and also make sure that we're not doing this alone. So when I say stay engaged, ensuring that if you have young people in your life in some way, whether it's your children, cousins, nephews, or even just young people that you mentor, figure out a way to stay engaged in and helping them to stay engaged in the educational process. Because what we're also seeing is that it's very easy for sometimes our young girls to become delinquent. They're not necessarily due to some of the biases that are operating in the classroom, aren't really getting some of the services that they need and the involvement that they need. So that's really important, to stay engaged at the local level, school systems, school boards, to also make sure that they see us showing up and that we're interested in what's happening with our children's education. And then I would also say the stay connected, making sure that we are staying connected to one another in various support systems as women, and also, I know this might be a little bit of a hot button in terms of if you do have children or you have other men in your life, how are we staying engaged to demonstrate where possible a united front? Men can also be wonderful fathers, mentors. I know my father had an immense impact on my life as well. And I think that we do ourselves an injustice to allow some of the perhaps systemic and even systematic issues with tearing apart men, Black women and Black men, and the role that that has on Black girls and their confidence and their self-identity issues. So I would put that out there as well. We got to partner with Black men on this as well.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you, Mariama. That's such an important point. Everyone made critical points, I think, and I'm just piggybacking really, or veggie-backing for those that are vegetarian. Basically, yeah, I think the entrepreneurship, if anything we've learned from the pandemic, is we've had to flip it, and we've had to pivot, and we've done that. We've done it really well. So what are those lessons that we can teach each other? For those of us that want to do it right now, what lessons are there that we can teach each other? And these are all conversations we can be having together. We know the young ones are really good with social media. Put them in leadership roles where they can teach us as well, and what that looks like. And I think, yeah, more ways that we can work together as units with males and females in the mix is very important. And how those relationships work now and how we see those working together moving forward. Young people, I think, also need to see that. And I'm just going to say it's okay for us to rest. Again, I can't put that out there enough, because we're always trying to figure out the next move, the next way to overcome. Like, what else do we have to do on our list, right? So we just put a lot of things on our list, and I want us to figure out, like, how do we wake up in the morning and just breathe and be for 5 minutes? How do we go to sleep at night and just breathe and be for 5 minutes and just say to ourselves, you know, we are worthy, we are worthy, we are enough for whatever way we showed up in that day on that day. And on the days that we can't do it, that we actually listen to ourselves in our body and be like, I just can't, whatever that means, that we communicate that to our children, you know, whatever that means, you know, it's a lot right now, and I'm going to rest. And this is important, and I want you to know that, because that lack of rest and that lack of being able to figure out how to unplug is costing us our health over anything else. It's costing us our health. So I just want to put that out there, that all the things we've added on our list to save Black women, let's save ourselves as well through rest and through modeling rest. And that's new for us. It's a new concept. If you haven't looked at the NAP ministry, look them up. It's just a new concept for us. And it's so important and vital, life-saving for us to focus on rest and rejuvenation as well.
I like that a lot. I love that a lot. I see a few people putting things in the chat. Someone popped mindfulness, stay in the moment, meditation. I love that. I love that. And these are really good things for us in terms of ideas that we can really integrate into our work with our chapter. The National Coalition 100 Black Women chapter is that idea, because these issues are so huge for us. The impact for Black women girls is so important for us in terms of ensuring that that we can be successful. So I really appreciate your thoughts with regards to these issues. So I want to make sure that the audience here knows that we certainly want you to chime in and be a part of the conversation. So I'm going to ask Coalition Sister Bathsheba, if you see anyone raise their hand and I may miss it, you know, let me know. Or again, I welcome if you put your questions in the chat, I can see it and I can make sure that I can present those to our panelist of experts today to do that. One of the things as you were talking, Kanika, that I think might be helpful also as we try to think about this idea of resting, and I love the idea of the NAP ministry, so I definitely want to know more about that, is sort of what are some of the things that you each do in terms of sort of balancing? I mean, I think you all are very, you know, obviously very successful, you know, but also I think that you've been able to obviously have some best practices based on the things that you shared with us that I would love for you to share with our audience as to what are some of the things that you do to really sort of have that time of sort of rest and relaxation that we all need, and something that we ought to start with the coalition for sure, just with our members.
Was that for everybody?
That's for everybody. Yeah, yeah. Help us figure out what we should be doing to rest and relax. I think I don't hear that much when you're in these kind of discussions. And I just so appreciate that it came up, and we've got, you know, over 80 women here on this Zoom. So we can get all the women on this Zoom to start thinking about how they're going to rest and relax and laugh more too, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not an easy question for me to answer because I'm always, you know, naturally for the organization I work with, I'm a mom of 3. Like I said, I don't have a lot of external support. So it's something that I'm constantly working on. But what I can say is one thing that I've learned, and I'll share with you today, is a breathing exercise, kind of like lifting your hands up, breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your nose, lifting.
I like that.
Do that for 15 rounds of 3. It actually energizes you and releases the stress out of your body. Like, it's actually physically getting those cortisol levels down, and those cortisol levels are what's so detrimental to our health. It's good in that fight and flight sense. You're scared, you react, but every day when we have these microaggressions, stressors, all those things, then that can we have to get the stress out. So I'm constantly researching and learning more ways to get stress out. That's just a quick, easy tip that can help me. And then a big thing for me is trying not to feel guilty when I'm like, I'm going to stay in the bed for an extra 30 minutes today, or, I'm going to pass this off to my husband and be like, you got it, because I just want to sit in the bed and watch this TV show right now. And so not feeling guilty for those little pleasures are so important, because taking a nap in the middle of the day, I mean, we can do it now. We're all virtual, and we feel guilty like if we just sneak off in the corner for a minute and take a nap, right? And I just stopped. I was just like, I'm tired. I've been working straight for 4 hours. I'm gonna have to cook dinner, get these kids. I'm gonna take a nap. I'm gonna sit here on my couch and I'm gonna take a nap because I can. I'm not showing up in the office. I'm gonna do it. I'm going to take my siesta. Everybody else in other countries do it. I have I can do it for myself now. And so for me, it's finding ways of not being guilty. I made a huge radical change. I was living, for those of you in the DMV, we had moved to Upper Marlboro to really be closer to community. And for me, it wasn't working for me just because the commute, most of my work and my husband's work is in DC. So we made this radical shift and we're like, we just gonna have to go back to DC. We're in a lot smaller place. But what that does mean is that I'm not commuting. I can run right quick into Rock Creek Park and get my 10 minutes in. And so the push to move was really around family and around what my kids needed. And then I told my husband, if we're commuting, if we're tired, if we're burnt out, what are they gonna have? They're not gonna have any parents.
Yeah,
so I was just like, I can make this shift. It seems crazy, but I want to go back and I want to be able to have more time for me, even if it's just 10 minutes running around the block. I get that.
And that's where I would also jump in here, if I could just.
Yeah, jump in.
When I work with folks around coaching in this area, I think it's really important to align your mind and making sure that you can manage through the guilt and just that art of letting go. The concept that it's okay not to be a superwoman, because we have this thing that's been put on us, this stereotype that has continued to transfer itself generationally. And so the way in which we think about the art of letting go and how we're taking care of ourselves. So I put in the chat a question that I ask all of my clients, I ask all of my girlfriend friends, I ask myself, how are you taking care of yourself? And making sure that you have one practice, the breathing practices, the 10 to 15 minutes, quiet times, a couple of times a day, whether it's you're using the Calm app or you're just sitting in silence. Integrating those things can be very helpful. Using a calendar to manage yourself if you need to. I put me time on my calendar every single day, and I have an alarm that allows me to get there. So I definitely want to encourage you to do that, as you were talking about, Kanika, in terms of the shifts that you all have had to make, in addition to, the walking and the activity, even if it's just getting 5-pound weights, and doing that in the chair, moving your legs, getting out and walking, all of those things are really important. But I think that one of the key things is aligning your mind. The art of letting go and not feeling guilty, like Kanika said, for doing that is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm. And Tabatha, did you want to jump in? We're just about out of time. We might have maybe 1-2 minutes left, but I want to make sure if you've got some tidbits. There's a lot of stuff in the chat, so I want everyone to make sure they're reading the chat. I know there's one question that we're not probably going to get to today, but this has been really great. This has been great. But Tabatha, I'd love to get some thoughts, some nuggets from you, as one would say.
I can keep it in 1 minute. And I will tell Kanika, this time will pass. Those of us with adult children, we're like, oh, we remember those days. It gets better. It gets better. Just hang on, hang in there. One thing you know for sure, life goes on. So it does get better. You know, I've resolved in I'm retired Army as well. And so for me, I've always had challenging positions, doing challenging things. Now the business, kids, things of that nature, but I've always told myself there's no such thing as balance. There are things in my life and in your life that is just going to require more attention. Sometimes it could be your children, because you know one requires more attention than the other because of things that's going on with them. It could be your business, it could be your marriage. You know, I've got to really focus right now because of the ebbs and flows. It could be various things. So don't guilt yourself on not being able to balance, because that's something that's been thrown out into the universe with no real definition to it. And people keep they keep trying to define it. But you just have a resolve that you're going to have to give 50%, 20%, 30 here, 20 there. And it's okay. It's okay not to be perfect across the board. It's okay. And I plan fun time. I plan fun. Okay. So that's one thing. I plan fun. Okay. This weekend, that's fun weekend. Okay. Yep. Traveling with girlfriends this weekend. I make it a purpose, to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. In fact, one of the things I remember from the president of the Black Women's Health Imperative, I was watching one of the webinars that you all did during the pandemic, because it was pretty stressful, a lot of mental health there. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that she said, it's okay to say that you're not okay. It's okay to say that and to take care of yourself. And so I just want to now turn to the panelists and just say to all of you, Dr. Kanika Harris, Ms. Mariama Boney, and Ms. Tabatha Turman, you all have been terrific. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. I've taken lots and lots of notes, and I'm certain that all of our participants have as well. And we are going to try to compile a lot of these ideas that you presented to us today, because I think with the coalition's work going ahead, we need to take care of ourselves in order to do the work. So thank you so much for helping us to unmask those pillars of resiliency in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. With that, I think we're going to transition to a musical selection. So thank you for your attention this afternoon, ladies. And again, thank you, panelists, for a great conversation.